Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Healthy Middle Ground podcast with me, Jen Curtis. Today's episode, I am going to talk about consistency. Now, when I ask in Instagram, like what your biggest problems are, and when I ask people who are starting to work with me and my clients what their biggest problem is, the one word that comes up the most is consistency. And so I've been aware of this for some time, and I've been knowing that I need to make a podcast on this because it is literally the biggest problem that you guys struggle with. But I've been kind of putting it off because I feel like consistency is one of those topics where, like, what different people mean by the word consistency is different. And it's kind of a word like willpower, where I don't think it really exists. And what I mean by that is that I don't think consistency is really the problem. I think the problem is actually other things that we'll get into in this episode. But what people end up saying, like the way they translate it into words, is consistency. But really, if you dig deeper, there are other things that are going on that are making you not be consistent, or it's the perception that you have about what you're supposed to do that makes it really hard to be consistent. And so it's a really hard thing to describe, because most people have this sense of, like, this is what I need to do. And my problem is that I can't do that thing all the time. And that's my problem with consistency. But normally the thing that they think they need to do is like this really perfect or really regimented way of being. So they can't do it because the moment they get sick, or they have a sick kid, or they have, I don't know, something come up at work, or they have something they have to do, it sort of throws everything off. Like, I can't do all the things that I need to do. And I think a lot of us struggle because in our generation, we're having kids later and later, right? Most of us became a mum in like our 30s. And I think there's just such a big part of our life where we're either single or, just with our partner, and we've got all the time in the world to work out and to eat well. And we think we're busy. Obviously, before you have kids, you think you're busy, but you're not really busy. You've got loads of downtime. You sleep loads, and like, you're just not that busy. And then you have kids, and life is totally different. Like, life is so much busier, and we still sort of have these same expectations around what we should do with our diet and exercise that are now no longer possible when you do have a kid or two or three. And yesterday I put in my stories a question sticker on, can you explain to me what your problem with consistency is? And I just want to share with you some of the answers that I got. So someone said, I seem to be really on point days that I work and busy, or I'm busy, but struggle at home with kids. And being a mum, my routine often lacks consistency depending on the needs of my little one. So this was something that came up a lot. Weekend, consistent during the week, and then on weekends, just go a bit bonkers. So we're seeing a lot of weekends being an issue, especially when we got kids. And then someone said, depending on what knocks me off my schedule, routine, it can be hard to find the spark of willpower to start again. It can take a while before I regather the strength to get back on it. I often force myself to go do a workout when I'm off kilter, but it doesn't always work. For example, today's a gym day, but I have a doctor's appointment at my usual gym time. I'm nervous and stressed and still have a lot of things to do today. I'm often fighting the impulse to just forget the workout. It's a struggle because I kind of don't want to do it, but I know I need to do it. And someone else said, I can forget my goal and plan. I could decide that that delicious bite is more important than my goal. And life feels like a roller coaster right now. And there's never a simple or normal week. And then finally, moods, hormones, sickness, kids, sickness, when life is throwing lemons at you. So I think the big themes that show up here is kind of the unpredictability of life with small children, and also weekends being a big one, like days being things happening that you don't expect. And I find this interesting because, I've got 3 kids, right? And I've got a baby, a 9-month-old baby, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And what I have learned as a mum is just that life is unpredictable and a little bit, things can happen. And so you have to you have to change your expectations and plan for the things that actually happen in real life with kids. So I think, for example, people sort of feel like they can be on track when everything's going smoothly. But then as soon as a kid gets sick, they're like, oh my God, no, I don't know what to do. I have too much going on. I've got all these plates spinning. And I think that a big part of this is that we kind of need to recalibrate and realize that this is the norm with kids. Like, this is the new normal, like things being unpredictable, things not necessarily going exactly to plan, or things coming up that you didn't expect. Like, you have to expect that, right? And I think a lot of us go through our lives as mums, especially when we've got little children, feeling like we can actually control everything and just plan for everything and have a plan that we can execute all the time. But this isn't the reality, right? Like, and so we're constantly kind of surprised by kids getting sick, or by, something coming up, like a birthday coming up, or someone else's birthday coming up, or some event coming up. And we aren't sort of learning that, like, okay, this is like the reality of kids, so I have to make a plan for that reality. So I want to go through some of the things that I think need to be done to improve your consistency, or to start to rethink consistency when it comes to your diet and your training. And I think the first thing I want to suggest that I think is really important is to lower your expectations. Like, lower your expectations of what you think you can do. So, for example, a lot of people that I work with used to, before they had kids, work out, every morning or 5 days a week. And they have in their head this idea that that's what they need to do, like a 45-minute HIIT workout every morning or something like that. And it is completely unrealistic. Like, you just cannot do it. But what you can do is work out twice a week, right? I get most of my clients to work out twice a week, even when they want to work out more. And sometimes it's only for 10 minutes, but it's just about doing it consistently and showing up. So when you have 2 workouts a week, you can normally find room in your schedule for that. And also, if you can't find room in your schedule, right, you can move it to another day. It's very, very flexible. If you've got to work out 5 days a week, then, something comes up one day and all of a sudden, like, you've lost a workout. But if you've got something on one day, you can just move it to the next day. So, for example, today I had to go to the shops and get a few things for my family, some stuff that, like, we need. So I am not going to get a workout in today as well, right? I mean, one thing is that I did a load of steps walking around the shop, so that's a lot of my movement. But I made sure I got my workout in yesterday, because that was a day where I just had to do the workout and then I could just start working. But, one woman gave the example of sort of having a doctor's appointment when her normal gym slot is. Well, you can't do anything about that, right? You can't do the workout and your and go to the doctors, because you probably just don't have enough time in the day. You've got to get back, and you've got to get back to work, and you've got to get a certain amount of work done unless you've taken a day off. So I think this is where a lot of people need to readjust and change their expectations, lower their expectations of what they can do. There's no way you can fit into 24 hours. The kids are at nursery for like 8 hours, and you've got to get 8 hours of work in. You've got to feed yourself, and you've got to go to a doctor's appointment, and you've got to do a workout. Like, you're not being realistic about what you can actually feasibly do in a day. You have to be able to say to yourself, okay, I've got a doctor's appointment today, so I'm not going to do a workout as well. It's just not possible. And then you just move the workout to the next day. And you know what? If you have a really crazy busy week and you can't do your 2 workouts and you just do 1 workout, it's all good, right? Next week, just do just just carry on with your program and do your 2 workouts. Like, it's not going to matter if you miss 1 workout this week in the grand scheme of things. If you show up and do 2 workouts a week, that's like 104 workouts over the course of a year. You miss 1 of those, right? It's not a big deal, right? You can make so much progress in 104 structured strength sessions. And, you miss a few of those, you miss whatever, it doesn't matter how many, but even if you miss like 30 of them, right, you can still do like 74 amazing workouts over a year where you're really progressing. Another thing I tell my clients to do is to not think about skipping a workout. Like, if today it's not going to work out, right, don't think, oh, okay, I'm just going to skip this workout. Just push it back, right? So you're pushing it back to tomorrow. So if you're doing 2 workouts a week, you're getting 3 or 4 rest days in between each workout. So let's say I'm due to do a workout today because I've already had 3 rest days. Okay, I'm just pushing it back, and then I'll have 4 rest days. No big deal. And then if I'm really not going to be able to make it happen tomorrow, just push it back another day, and I've had 5 rest days. Like, no biggie. And if you are doing 2 workouts a week and they're structured strength sessions, and you've got like an A and a B workout, right? You just do the B workout, okay? Even if it starts to trickle into the next week, right? I end up doing it at the start of next week instead of today. It doesn't matter. Just keep alternating between your 2 workouts, and just the way you conceptualize it needs to be a bit different. Like, I'm pushing it back. I'm not skipping it. So another example that I see a lot of sort of lowering, when it comes to lowering expectations, is that, women have this idea in their heads they're going to have a salad every lunch, or they're going to eat, they've got a certain way of thinking that they're going to eat, like, I don't know, things that are quite elaborate, meals that are quite elaborate. There's tons on Instagram and things like that where it takes a bunch of different ingredients, and it takes a lot of planning and prepping time to make these things. Like, I don't know, chia pudding, or like what are those things that are like cold oats that you put in the fridge? I think they're disgusting, but whatever. So you've got all this planning to do. You've got to put them all together and like put them in the fridge, and a lot of women want it to be really like presentable, and it's got about 10 different ingredients in it. Again, like, lowering your expectations is just about having way simpler options available, so you can just grab them and go. So, some of my go-tos are like literally just fruit and yogurt. And another one is just 3 scrambled eggs and a slice of toast, right? I often eat vegetables just like quickly, like give them a wash and then just eat them whole. Like, just take off a chunk of cucumber, just have like a pepper, you can eat it, you can eat it whole, or just quickly grate a carrot and just eat it whole, rather than having to feel like, oh, I've got to make this elaborate salad or something like that. You can literally just keep it really simple and just rinse, repeat a lot of the same meals. Another go-to I have is just like, grabbing a yogurt and a piece of fruit, right? Like, that's the ultimate convenience food. And I do admit that if I have a super busy day, let's say I've got loads of calls and I've got loads of stuff to get done, I might have fruit and yogurt for breakfast, fruit and yogurt for lunch, fruit and yogurt as an afternoon snack. Like, is it ideal? No, it's not, but it's kind of quick. It's easy to grab. It's easy to move on. And not every day looks like that, but it will look like that if I'm super duper busy and just don't have time to think about food or to make myself like even just, scrambled eggs on toast is literally like, it takes 3 minutes to make. Likewise, my dinner, I'm not joking or exaggerating when I say almost every meal, every evening, I have a cheese toastie for dinner, and either just have a plain cheese toastie, or I put tuna, a third of a can of tuna and chopped onion in it, finely chopped onion in it, or chicken and finely chopped onion in it. And it's so good. It's like this tuna melt. It's this like chicken melt. It's so yummy. And honestly, most evenings I can't even, after I've got the kids to bed and things like that, I cannot imagine starting to cook a dinner. It's like 8:30, something like that. I'm so tired, and really like eating cheese, melted cheese and bread is so enjoyable. I know exactly what my portion is. I know it's like a 450 to 500 calorie meal. I know it's enough to make me feel full so that I can go to bed. And it's just super easy. It's so cheap. It's so quick to make. But a lot of women will have in their minds, they've got to then start cooking, and they've got to have like, I don't know, some sort of more elaborate dish, some sort of big warming like bowl, which is great, which I love having too. I just don't have the energy to start cooking it at that time of night. And it is not realistic, I think, when you do have, if you do have a full-time job and you've got little kids, right, it's not realistic to start cooking at like 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night and every evening have something different on the table. If you're a stay-at-home mum and your kids are going to school, going to daycare, and you can cook during the day. That's what like a lot of housewives used to do in the 1950s when they had something different on the table every single night. But that isn't the reality if, you are working full-time and then you're coming back home, then you're dealing with kids for 3 hours, bath, bed, dinner, all of that stuff. And then you've got to like cook dinner for you and your husband. Like that it's just not realistic, right? It's just not realistic to expect yourself to do that all the time. So again, like lowering expectations and having something less good than what you think you need to have, or less ideal than what you think you should have. I have 110 grams of white bread with my cheese toastie. Any of you who've seen it on Instagram, it's a Israeli pita. It's not like, wholemeal sourdough bread that I made myself and blah, blah, blah. Like it's just literally the bog standard bread that you get out here. And you can like eat that sort of stuff and lose weight. You just have to, you have to be focused on like the right metrics, and creating elaborate fancy meals all the time is not the right metric to be thinking about. Okay. So the second thing I think you really need to be able to be consistent is you need to have a realistic and flexible plan. Okay. So before I gave the example of like working out twice a week, right? If that's your plan, right, to work out twice a week, it's normally possible to fit those 2 workouts in. And I often say to people, like, you don't have to clear time in your schedule every single morning to do it. It's just twice a week. So for example, there's one morning a week where I shoot off to do my workout and my husband does the drop off. And some people I tell them, to get that a second workout in at the weekend, right? So you got a morning and you got one day at the weekend. You need to fit those in. It's not every single day. It's not every single morning. And if something comes up, it's great to have regular workout days. I work out Sunday and Wednesday, but if they get moved, if something happens, then just move it to the next day. Just move it to 2 days later. It doesn't matter. That is having a flexible and realistic plan. I like to do a bit of cardio as well. So I'll aim to do 2 strength workouts a week and 2 runs a week. Because running, I don't like running, but I can just put some trainers on, put a sports bra on, and then I can leave the house and be back within 30 minutes. So, I can leave my husband with the kids when he comes home one evening at 6:30 or 7, and I can shoot out, get my run in and come back and still be there for bedtime. And I can often shoot off on like a Saturday morning to do the same thing and come back and everyone's still sort of like, hanging out and playing or watching TV or whatever. Do I get 4 workouts in every single week? No, I don't. So this is where I have, I try to do the minimum of the 2 strength workouts a week, right? That feels very easy to do most weeks. And I am pretty consistent and pretty much always get them done. Are there sometimes weeks where I don't get a single workout in? Yeah, there are. Sometimes everything happens at once. I get sick, kids get sick, my husband's on reserve duty, like everything's going on at once and I don't work out, right? It's not the end of the world because that's not my normal week, right? My normal week, I get my 2 workouts in. And then when I do have a bit more time, like, an extra half an hour here or extra half an hour there, I get 1 or 2 extra runs in a week, right? And some weeks I get 1 run, some weeks I get 2, but that's just a bonus. I don't see that as like something I, have to do every single week. So again, by having like a minimum target, like a really, really realistic target, and then, added bonuses that you can get on top of that, like that's how you can make sure that you kind of always hit the minimum of what you need to do. And then sometimes you can do a little bit more. I do want to say here as well, like this is a really intense time of life. Like having small children and babies and toddlers, right? It's such an intense time of life. And I feel like I mainly work with mums in this time of life. And I feel like a lot of women don't fully get it. I mean, they get it. They understand that this is a busy time of life, but they don't fully like really grasp how much busier and chaotic things are right now. And this is going to be like a decade like this. Like realistically, it's going to be like a decade like this. And you've got to give yourself some breathing room in that decade. You've got to make it work for that decade. It's not going to be forever, right? You probably had this high powered job and worked, a ton of hours up to having children. And then when they're all a bit older, you're going to have some breathing room again, right? Life is going to feel very, very different. You're not going to be waking up at 5 a.m. every single morning because you're going to have teenagers that are lying in and things like that, right? You're going to have a lot of your time and energy back. So you've got to be really, really laser focused with this is the time of life that I'm in. I've got to be realistic about this decade where I'm having small children. You can't expect to have the same approach to exercise or diet or, in my opinion, work as you would have in those other times of life where you're not raising small children. Okay, so back to the idea of having a realistic and flexible plan, right? If we apply that to your diet, right? You want to have a plan, okay? First of all, you want to have a plan because I work with so many women who are just winging it. They're just going into each day with a blank slate and just going, oh, what am I going to have for breakfast? Oh, looking in the fridge, trying to figure out what to have, rushing because they've got to get to work. And then they just go through their day and they don't think about food. And then all of a sudden they get starving hungry and they're like, oh shit, what am I going to eat? And then, maybe they're working from home. So they go and start rummaging through the fridge. But by this point, they're already starving hungry. Or then they just order something online and get like Wolt or Deliveroo or whatever. And then have a big bowl of pasta. And then they're really, really tired. And then, the afternoon comes round and they just they just rush out and go pick up their kids and they're not thinking about like what they're going to actually eat. And then they get home with the kids and the kids are eating and messing around and going all like crazy and everyone needs to poo and cry at the same time. And then they just start hoovering up their kids' leftovers. And then you get to the evening and you still haven't thought about what you're just winging it, right? And the problem with food is that you can't just eradicate the need to make the decision about what you're going to eat. All you can do is delay the decision making until the last possible moment. So then you're starving hungry, and this is the worst time to be making decisions about food. So what I get people to do is to go into it with a basic, simple, realistic plan. Part one of the plan is to eat at regular meal times, 4 times a day: breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack, and dinner. It's not rocket science, right? This is the reason why 99% of humans throughout the history of the world have had those set meal times: breakfast, some kind of breakfast, lunch, some kind of afternoon snack, and some kind of dinner, right? This is how almost everyone has always eaten. And this works for like 85% of people. Some people do well on a slightly different schedule, but this works for most people. Then you've got to have some realistic meals that you can actually make or actually have time to get together, even if you're really, really busy. So again, going back to my examples, like fruit and yogurt, right? You don't need to have 5 different breakfasts that you have, right? Like people always overcomplicate this. They're like, okay, I'm going to have eggs and toast one morning with like some avocado and some of this and some of that. And then another morning I'm going to make like some overnight oats. And then another morning I'm going to have this. Like, no, you don't need all those options. Like I literally eat either a yogurt or yogurt and fruit every single morning, right? Sometimes the quantities change a little bit, like say I might have a yogurt and a half because I had a workout and I'm eating late or whatever, but it basically doesn't change. Just yogurt and fruit, right? It really doesn't need, most people just don't need more food than that as well. You might think it's not enough, but it probably will be if you're going to eat again at 12 and if you're eating at regular meal times and not waiting forever to eat. Lunch can just be a tuna sandwich. It can just be, again, like working from home. I just scramble up 3 eggs, have a piece of toast. Like that's it. It's really as simple as that. Afternoon snack, I love to make a berry shake with half a scoop of protein powder and a yogurt in it. But, if I'm in a rush, again, fruit and yogurt. And another one of my favorites is a slice of toast with cottage cheese on it and slices of tomato with everything bagel seasoning on it that I make myself. Doesn't matter. You can buy it shop bought. It really doesn't matter. Salt and pepper, that kind of thing. It's really yummy. It's really, really filling for like 220 calories. I often have that when I get back home and my kids are eating, because it's just a really quick, easy thing that I can make and I don't have to think about it. And then dinner is a cheese toasty, right? Sometimes I have chicken and potatoes. Sometimes I have spaghetti bolognese, like for dinner, right? These things are all great, but I just have a really, really, really simple plan that I just rinse, repeat every day, because life is just too short to be making these really elaborate meals and making it really complicated and having 17 different ingredients and thinking every day about a different meal that you can have. Is it a little bit boring? Yes. Okay. It can be a bit boring. I understand if you want more variation than that, but it's simple and it's easy to execute. And if you are just completely overwhelmed with everything that's going on in your life and food and diet and all of this stuff, then you need to make it simpler rather than having constant variation, right? One of my favorite expressions is that there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. So you can make it really, really simple and easy. And will it be a little bit boring? Sometimes, yes. But when you get a bit bored and when you want to, you can add in more variation, right? When you have the bandwidth. But when you don't have the bandwidth, because you've got to get the kids to school and then you've got to go and work and then you've got to go to a doctor's appointment, whatever, you need to have a really, really, really simple backup plan that you can just execute. You can just eat and then move on with your day, so that you don't have to spend important decision-making credits thinking about food. Also, the plan needs to be flexible. So I really recommend eating at these set meal times, what I call anchor points. Again, breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner, usually around 8 a.m., 12, 4, 8 p.m., right? But try to eat around a 2-hour window of that time, okay? Again, a flexible plan, right? It doesn't need to be bang on 12. You've got a meeting at 12, cool. Are you hungry just beforehand? Eat a piece of fruit. And then after the meeting's finished at 1, go and eat your meal, right? It's flexible and it's usually very, very, very easy for most people to execute. Are you going out with a friend today, like for lunch, or are you having lunch with your colleagues at work? Fine. Just swap out what you would normally have, your normal go-to boring meal. Let's say your scrambled eggs on toast that you would have if you were working from home. Just swap that out for a sensible meal that you have out with your colleagues, right? It's a flexible plan that you can execute no matter what's going on. You've got a sick kid at home. Now they're not like they're at home with you and you're not working, right? Again, it still helps to have, or even if you are working and you're trying to work with a kid at home, you still have to eat, right? So you just go back and fall back to that super duper plan. Quickly scramble up 3 eggs, have a slice of toast, just shove it in your face and then carry on working, right? You still have to eat. That's just a reality of it. You can't just skip the meal, even if you're super duper busy. So that's when you revert back to your super simple plan rather than being like, imagine like you've got your kid at home sick, you've still got to work, right? And you've got no idea what you're going to have for lunch and you just got to figure it out on the spot, right? That's the worst, absolute worst thing to do. You got to have a basic plan. I try and get my clients to sit down and create a really basic meal plan of just those 4 meals with one go-to meal. Almost everyone overcomplicates this as well. Everyone comes up with 3 or 4 options for each meal. You don't need that to start with. You need a really simple plan. The more overwhelmed and the more busy you are, the more you need a simpler plan of just one thing, one go-to meal for each of the 4 like meal times. You might say again, like, I want more variation than that. That's fine. You can build more variation in once you get into a routine of what you're doing. And again, there are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. So you can build more variation into it, but then it gets more complicated and then you get more overwhelmed, right? So you have to choose between simplicity or being overwhelmed, right? You can't have both, right? You can't have this like super complex meal and not feel overwhelmed. You've got to make it simpler. Okay, so point number 3 is the weekend, right? That comes up a lot. Like I'm fine during the week and then the weekend comes along and I just lose it. And I want to start this by saying, I totally get it. The weekends are so much harder and it's hard to put my finger on why. But I think like in this period of life where I have 3 little kids, I think it's like just the nature of that. Like there's a combination of things. Like one, you are kind of dealing with food throughout a lot of the day because your kids need to eat and they all need to eat at different times and stuff like that. There's also like this kind of more laid back feel at the weekend. And I think a lot of us have this kind of like, oh, I deserve to have a treat. I've been really good all week. I've worked hard all week. And now I'm kind of in relax mode and there's like less to do. And well, it's not necessarily less to do if you've got little kids and they're not at daycare, but there is less to do because you're also not working and you kind of want to relax. And the only way to relax is through food. So one of the things I say to clients when they start working with me is that you've got like, most people have 3 different typical days, right? And for most people, it's a work from home day, work from the office day and weekend, right? There's 3 different types of days. So what you want to do is you want to have a realistic and flexible plan for those 3 different types of days, right? So they're still the same basic plan, right? Breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner. You want to keep it as similar as possible. But you need to build in a little bit. You have to have a slightly different plan for the weekend than what you have when you're at home. So you might start by having slightly higher calories, right? By budgeting still, like you can't sort of go crazy on the weekend. That's what a lot of people do, right? They hit their calories during the week and then at the weekend, they just go way over maintenance calories and into a massive surplus. And then they end up at maintenance calories across the course of the week, right? So you have to realize that you have to change your habits over the weekend. The weekend's what holds most people back. And you can't just have a free pass or a cheat day or whatever on the weekends. So I think there is also an element of accepting that because I think a lot of people are sort of lying to themselves and kidding themselves that I can have whatever I want at the weekend as long as I'm good during the week. And that's just not the case. But what you can do is you can have a more realistic plan or a more flexible plan for the weekend. So you still, and a different plan to what you have during the week. So maybe you increase your calories, right? To maintenance calories. You still have to keep it at maintenance or below. If you're in a deficit 5 days of the week and then at maintenance calories 2 days of the week, you will still lose weight. It will just be a bit slower. But if that's all you can do, that's all you can do. What I recommend to a lot of my clients is to have 1 higher calorie day a week. So trying to hit maintenance calories 1 day of the week, and that's one of their days at the weekend. And the other day at the weekend, trying to still hit their 20% calorie deficit or whatever it is that we've budgeted. Most people can do this. Again, if you need to have 2 higher calorie days at the weekend, fine. It will just slow you down, but it is still possible to lose weight. But you do actually have to reduce the amount of food. If you're eating like 1,000 calories more than your maintenance calories at the weekend, because you're kind of just saying, oh, it doesn't matter, it's fine, I'll start again Monday. You do need to actually accept that you can't just do that, right? So there's kind of 2 parts of this. One is having a realistic plan and a flexible plan. But the other part of this is also, accepting reality, right? Like there are just basic laws of physics, right? Gravity is always going to affect us, right? And the laws of thermodynamics are always going to affect us as well. You can't just get away with eating as much as you want at the weekend. And you do actually need to start, decreasing what you're eating on those days. But most people kind of also have whatever they want at the weekend. They eat totally different foods. So they make pancakes with their kids in the morning, right? It's probably better for you. You can't just have every single meal having fun foods, right? So I make pancakes for my kids, but I still try to have my yogurt and fruit in the mornings on the weekends. Lunchtime, we might all sit down together. Sometimes we have something different. We have like a big 1-pot meal, or we have shakshuka or something like that. But again, you can weigh up and measure up the portions that are right for you to make sure that you're not having too much. You can go and have an ice cream. I often go and have an ice cream with my kids in the afternoon, and I just budget my afternoon snack as being, I'm going to have an ice cream instead of sensible food. And then dinner, normally just keeping it simple because it's been a long day and I just want to get to bed, right? So there are ways of I think also a lot of people tend to just snack all day at the weekends. Again, you can't just snack constantly. You need to kind of still stick to the basic plan of breakfast, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner, even at the weekends, even if you're eating slightly different foods. But if you just cut out all the snacking along the way and constant nibbling on things, and especially on kids' foods, you're going to get a lot of calories out of your weekends. I think another important part of this as well is getting back on track. So, life is going to happen. And no matter how, let's say you've got a realistic plan, right? And you've got a flexible plan, but then still life throws a whole bunch of shit at you, right? You have all of your kids are sick, you're sick, your husband's sick, like whatever, right? And then you're totally off track, or you go on holiday and you just go and enjoy yourself, or, you have this big work project comes up and kids get sick, whatever, you're just thrown for a loop. You need to be able to get back on track. And this is something that people struggle with. And I think part of this is that you need to have a realistic enough plan that you can keep doing it even when things are crazy in the first place, right? Like when I have a sick kid at home, I don't eat different to how I eat when they're at home, because I still aim to eat my 4 meals a day. Even if I'm not tracking my food or whatever, let's say I get sick as well, I'll still aim to eat my 4 meals. I won't just descend into snacking all the time, because these are my habits. I might eat slightly different foods. I might have a bit more comfort food, but I'll still stick to those 4 days and eat those 4 meals and those basic habits, right? And those same foods that generally make me feel good. But let's say I do have a day that's completely bonkers, I just decide I'm feeling really shit and I've had a really rough time, and I just, go bananas and just eat chocolate all day long, right? The next day, just get back on track, right? It happened, whatever. Just so many people let this keep going on and on and on for days or weeks before they get back on track. You just have to get back on track, even if it's not perfect. And your plan has to be simple enough that when things are crazy, you can execute the plan. That doesn't mean it's never gonna go completely sideways, right? Sometimes it's going to go sideways because there's just too much on your plate, or because you are you're feeling really, really shit or something, right? But you just, or because there's a party or there's something going on where you just go at a holiday where you go and really, really enjoy yourself. You just got to get back on track on the normal plan, and you've got to get really good at getting back on track, right? Something that I don't think people realize is that for me, for example, I do this for a living. I don't eat perfectly every single day. I have shit days. I have PMS once a month. I have, times when I'm sick or when I'm feeling really down and when I emotionally eat, right? Those things happen. I have times when I get really, really stressed because my kids are all driving me bonkers, and then I either drink too much wine or eat too much chocolate or both, right? But then the next day I just get back on track, right? And this is something that people find so hard. They get fuckititis. They start going, oh, well, I've ruined everything. I've ruined all my progress. It's this catastrophizing mindset happens, that then you think, right, there's no point doing anything. There's no point. I've completely ruined everything, right? So that is where it comes down to having the right mindset of it doesn't matter if things aren't perfect. It doesn't matter if things don't go to plan one day. It doesn't matter if things get off track one day. It doesn't matter if you eat too much one day. Just get back on track. It's not a big deal. But so many people sort of catastrophizing about it, and then they can't get back on track because it's this big thing and it's the end of the world. But I'll also say that if your life is so hectic and so busy that you have no breathing room, and you're getting to the end of every week feeling completely exhausted and completely, strung out and really, really thinly spread, right? You need to, that's not a kind of you problem, right? That's not a productivity problem or whatever. You're never going to be able to be on track with everything if you're living that way, right? And sometimes I work with people who are living that way. Their lives are so filled to the brim, and then they're trying to cram more things in, and then they're trying to cram a diet and exercise on top of that. And I'm like, where do you have room in your schedule to work out? And they're like, I don't. And it's like, well, where are we going to fit? You can't just create these workouts from nothing. You need to actually have the time to do these things. So, if your life is so hectic that you don't have any breathing room, you need to reevaluate things, and you need to get some things off your plate, and you need to have a little bit more downtime. And if your plan should be simple enough and flexible enough and realistic enough that it fits in even when things get crazy. And then when things get more crazy and, a wheel falls off, you have to be able to get back on track the next day and brush it off and just forget about it. It doesn't matter. Don't beat yourself up. Just keep going on. I think that is another thing, or a set of things, that make it really hard for people to be consistent. Okay, a few more things that I want to mention that I think makes consistency difficult is that a lot of people focus on intensity rather than consistency. So they will sort of go really hard with their diet. They'll cut everything out. They'll go really low calories. They'll try and work out 5 days a week. They'll focus on, or they'll go to the gym and they'll do a really, 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 really hard workout on day one. And then they'll be really pooped from it and they'll be sore for 5 days. And their plan of going to the gym every day just goes out of the window, because even if they're not sore, they can't bring themselves to do the same, really hard workout 5 days a week. So, consistency actually looks like having 2 workouts a week and not 5. And often you need to go to the gym and do less than what you think you need to do. There's a big element of sort of holding back a little bit when it comes to going to the gym. You can't just go as hard and as fast as possible every single time you go to the gym. And a big part of maturing in your exercise journey, your fitness journey, is realizing that it's not going as hard or as heavy as you can every single time. It's about following a plan and showing up consistently and doing a bit less than what you think you need to do, so that you're not tired later, so that you're not super duper sore the next day. And the same with dieting. If you go really, really, really hard, people can't sustain that kind of intensity when you're being too restrictive with your diet. There's no wiggle room. There's no day off. And I think the reason this is so hard for people to understand or to really grasp is that fat loss really is a long-term project, right? It really is about delayed gratification. And any work that you do today, so hitting your 1,500 calorie target, going to the gym for 20 minutes, right? Like those, or going up by 1 kilo in your squat or 2 kilos in your squat or whatever, right? Those things don't give you an immediate gratification. You don't straight away see your weight loss or your fat loss. You only see the fat loss after many, many, many weeks, sometimes months of consistently doing the same thing. And that is notoriously hard for people to do. It's hard for people to realize that they're not going to get. We're so used, especially today, we're so used to to instant gratification and to getting, a buzz off of the thing that we're doing, the action that we're doing. And often when it comes to fat loss, the actions that you're doing don't give you that buzz afterwards. I mean, sometimes exercise does. If you can get to the point where you feel really good after your workout and you got all these endorphins flowing and stuff like that, that is going to really, really, really help with your consistency, because you're going to chase that feeling. But in general, those acute sensations or the acute things that happen straight after, they aren't the results, right? It's about doing the work. And then you get the results much later on down the line. And fat loss is made up of lots and lots of little things every day. There's no big bang or one big exciting thing. So people find this really, really hard because they're used to doing, if you go on a really crazy, really extreme diet and you do loads and loads and loads of exercise, you might lose weight really, really quickly. And people love that idea. But if it's not sustainable, right? If you're really hungry, if you're having to muster up loads of strength to do your workouts, it's taking you loads and loads of time. If your calories are really, really low, you're just not going to be able to sustain this long term. And one example that I like to give is that there's an expression: you can't make a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. There's just it's going to take a certain amount of time for the baby to grow. And you just can't speed that process up. And fat loss is the same, right? If you get everything right in your diet and training, you can expect to lose between half 8% and 1% of your body weight every week. So if you weigh 80 kilos, that's between 0.4 and 0.8 of a kilo every week, right? You can expect to not be hungry while you're doing that. You've got a little bit of wiggle room for some fun foods or alcohol, and you're going to be on sensible calories. If you try and cut your calories way lower than that, you might see results a little bit faster, but you're probably just going to end up going, oh, fuck this, and then having a big binge, right? And then that sets you back. So there is only so much, even there's only so much body fat you can lose each day and each week, right? If you get in a 3,500 calorie deficit, so in 1 pound of fat or half a kilo of fat, there is 3,500 calories, right? So you can't create that deficit in one day, but you can create it over the course of a week, right? Because if you need 2,000 calories a day to maintain your weight, you need 14,000 calories over the week, right? So it is possible to lose half a kilo in 1 week, but there isn't really anything you can do to make it happen faster than that, because you can't just be on super duper low calories. Building a business is really similar to this, right? You have to show up on Instagram every day. You have to show up and do your podcast every week. You have to really consistently build your systems. You have to answer messages. You have to just be answering questions from your clients and from potential clients. You have to, it's about doing lots and lots and lots of boring things every day. Like yesterday, I spent half a day just writing an email chain that I needed to write. Okay. It's not exciting or glamorous. It's just a little bit more every day. Is that going to be the thing that's going to completely change my business? No, it's not, right? There isn't going to be one big thing that you do, right? One thing that you do in one day and it's going to completely transform your business, right? That's what gurus and business gurus and stuff online trying to sell you courses and trying to sell you methods. That's what they try and sell you. It's like, just do this one thing, this one little trick, just buy my course. And in 2 hours, you're going to get these amazing results, right? Everyone loves this idea of instant gratification, doing this one thing that has huge impact. But actually, fat loss isn't like that. Fat loss is like showing up and doing these fairly insignificant things every day, eating 1,500 calories instead of 2,000 calories, right? Eating 4 meals a day instead of snacking all the time, eating 400, 500 calorie meals and not 7, 8, 1,000 calorie meals, right? Like it's showing up twice a week, not showing up every single day. It's doing a 20-minute workout, not doing an hour workout, right? It's from these really relatively small things that over time they compound. And that's also really hard for people to get their heads around. But that's also how you build a business. It's how you raise children. It's how you do any long-term. It's how you save money, right? You can't save all the money you need for retirement in one day. You have to do it over many years and decades, right? And this is what is really, really, really hard for humans to do, and what you have to understand about fat loss if you want to be successful. Another point I want to make about consistency is that a lot of people rely too heavily on motivation, and they think that what they need is more motivation. And they think they need to, they come into the process with guns a blazing, all kind of bubbling over with excitement and motivation. I really, really, really want to do this, and I'm going to work really, really hard. I often find that those people are actually the ones who fizzle out the quickest and don't actually get the best results. And my most successful clients aren't actually the most motivated ones in the beginning. They're often the ones who are very cautiously optimistic and who are a little bit anxious or have a bit of trepidation about the process, unsure if they're going to be able to do what they need to do. But they've kind of gotten tired of that really high energy state of motivation of being yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to lose all this weight, and I'm going to do all this stuff, and I'm going to work out 5 days a week, and I'm going to completely transform my body really, really quickly. People who rely on that high energy feeling in the beginning, they call it motivation. Again, I think motivation is one of those things that's kind of like willpower and kind of like consistency, that people use the word, but what they mean is not actually what they mean or what they want or what they need, right? So that motivation is that high energy feeling that you get in the beginning of a project, right? And it's not actually motivation. It's just novelty. It's just something new. It's just something exciting. And that feeling, it's really great and it's really fun to have, but it doesn't last. You don't feel that feeling. It peaks and then it drops. And one of the things that I say to people in the beginning of the process is that there's something around the 2 to 4 week mark called the valley of disappointment, right? Where you're all like excited and you want to do all the things and it's really like new and exciting. And then around the 2 to 4 week mark, your energy plummets and you're like, okay, like it's not happening as fast as I thought. It's not fun anymore. It's not new and exciting anymore. If you can get through, I tell my clients, you're going through the valley of disappointment right now. And if we can get you through that valley of disappointment and out the other side, you're going to then go into, and excuse me, because this is cheesy, but you're going to go into the planes of consistency, right? If you can just accept that this process is not exciting, it's boring, it's not glamorous, it's not sexy, it's just doing the unsexy, boring things every day, whether or not you feel like it, that is what is going to get you results. If you can get to that point, then you will just do the things. If you can make it habit and just do it anyway and commit to doing it for a period of time, you'll then start to get the results. And then when you start to feel the results, that will feed back into your feeling of motivation. And people who just love that feeling of high energy motivation at the beginning, and they think that that's what they need more of in order to keep doing what they're doing, they're the ones that always fizzle out, flake out, and then stop the process and just can't follow through with anything, right? So you want to think of motivation as like a fun but flaky friend, right? When she's there, she's the center of the party. She's loads of fun. She's like telling jokes. She's so much fun to be around. But then she'll flake out and ghost you and won't answer your WhatsApp messages and will just like disappear off the face of the planet for a year. Right? That is what motivation is like. And you have to understand that feeling of motivation, as fun as it is, it comes and goes and it's very flaky and it's very fickle. And if you can understand that and understand, okay, I don't need that high energy feeling. What I need to do is just do the fucking boring things, whether or not I feel like it. That is what will get you to a place of consistency. And then you will start to get results. Once you've lost a kilo, it gives you a bit more confidence, gives you a bit of an energy boost. Once you lose 5 kilos and people start noticing, then it feeds back into that motivation. But you have to do the work first, right? People think the way it works is I have motivation and then I get results and then I feel confidence. It's actually the other way round, right? You do the things, you have action first. You do the things that you need to do, and then you will get results, and then you will feel motivation because you did the things and you got the results, right? It's not the other way around. It's not motivation first, and because you feel motivated, then you will act. If you're relying on that sequence of events, you are going to fizzle out and you're not going to be able to keep doing it. Then the next piece of the puzzle of that is doing it so consistently that it then becomes habit and you just can't do anything different. Like just to give you an example, I used to always have a sweet breakfast. I always used to have a couple of cookies with my coffee for breakfast. And that was just a habit that I had. And now I only ever have yogurt and fruit basically for breakfast. That's pretty much all I ever have. Now, sometimes I do think in the morning, like, oh, I'd really fancy a cookie, or, I do think about having one and I just think, wait, I'm just hungry. Let's just have my yogurt and fruit and then let's see how I feel. And I almost never have the cookie or the chocolate for breakfast like I used to, right? This is just a habit that I have now. I have yogurt and fruit for breakfast, and that's just what I do. And so you need to get to the point as well where these basic, simple actions, they become habit, they become ingrained. You do them whether or not you feel like them because they are just habit. And once you get to that point, things start getting a lot easier to maintain. Okay, the final point that I'm going to make is it's kind of related. It's a little bit of a tangent, But something that I find in a lot of people is that they have what I call good student syndrome. Okay. So they come into the process with lots and lots of motivation and say, like, they start working with me, for example, and what they want is praise and to be validated that they're doing the right thing. So they just want me to give them a pat on the back and say, well done, you're doing really well, keep going. But the problem is that they're often doing a lot of the wrong things. So I need to point out to them what things they're doing wrong. So for example, thinking that they can get away with having 2 biscuits for breakfast every morning, or eating fucking granola every single morning for breakfast, thinking this is going to be a thing that's going to fuel them and make them feel full. Okay. So my job is to point out what mistakes you're making and get you to create better habits and things that are going to help you achieve your goal. Now, if you're the kind of person who's like, right, I want to hear it, just tell me what I'm doing wrong, I'm clearly doing something wrong, I'm here to learn, please just point out the mistakes I'm making, right? Those sort of people do really, really well. They're really coachable and they have a growth mindset. They want to learn and they want to know that they're making mistakes. Because if they're doing everything perfectly and they're still not getting the results, that fucking sucks, right? Whereas some people have, again, this good student syndrome where they're actually really scared of getting any feedback, or like, I find that when I do point out what they're doing wrong, they get quite defensive or they get quite sensitive about it, and they kind of don't want to hear it. Again, they just want to get a pat on the back, and they basically want me to be a cheerleader and to help them, like, to feed into the energy to help keep the motivation high to do the unrealistic, unsustainable things that they think they need to do. But it's not going to work, right? A good coach isn't just a cheerleader. It isn't somebody who just says, yeah, well done, clap, 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 you're doing a really good job. A good coach is somebody who helps you recognize what mistakes you're making and helps you implement better strategies. So I've been there myself. I worked with a coach a few years ago, and I found one of the most useful things in the process was that he looked at what I was eating and told me where I was making mistakes and where I needed to eat different types of food, or where I was doing something wrong. And my initial reaction was to sort of like defensively, send a voice message and explain why I'm having this and why I can't do what he's saying and blah, 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 blah. But then when I actually stopped and thought about it, I was like, he's right. Like, this isn't working. I can't just expect to keep doing the same bloody thing and expect different results. Like, I'm going to have to change something in what I'm doing. I'm clearly doing something wrong. Otherwise I would be getting the results. And once he corrected those things and I took it on board and then started to change those things, I started to see results. So again, if you're somebody who, has good student syndrome and just wants, A plus written on there, graded on their paper, telling them they just done it 100% amazing, perfect work, you don't need to do anything differently, right? You're probably not going to get results because you're going to just want somebody to tell you, just to validate you and tell you you're doing everything right. And you're probably going to be super sensitive when somebody points out that you're doing something wrong. Whereas if you're somebody who, like, you view the process as knowing that you're making mistakes, you just don't know what you're doing wrong and you're here to find out, you want feedback and you want to learn, you will succeed. If you have that sort of mindset, the growth mindset rather than the fixed mindset, you will succeed on the process. Okay, so that was really long. That was like 52 minutes on consistency. And I didn't even really talk about consistency. I kind of talked around it a lot because, again, I think it's a topic where it's not actually what people say it is. If you struggle with consistency, which is probably why you're listening to this, and if you have commented on my stories that you struggle with consistency, I would love to hear from you, right? Did this help? Right? Did this podcast episode help with some kind of paradigm shift of understanding what you're doing wrong and what you need to do, like how you need to see the process? Or have I just talked at you for 50 minutes and just not really said anything, and you still feel like you don't know what it means to be consistent or what you need to do differently to be consistent? Please tell me. I would love to have your feedback on this podcast episode. I'd love to know what you think. If you are stuck and need help, right, just send me a message. I have an amazing online coaching process. I love getting messages program. I love getting messages from people saying, I've just implemented the advice that you gave on Instagram and I've lost 20 pounds. And that's amazing, right? But if you are not doing that, stop being stuck, get in touch with me, stop waiting for the perfect time, because it's never going to happen, especially if you have kids. You're going to be waiting like another decade. get in touch. My job is not to sort of give you a really strict plan that you have to do no matter what for the next 3 months. My job is to help you, if you have kids, if you have a busy life, if you have a job, to help you figure out how to do it while you're doing those things. Okay. So get in touch. If you'd like to learn more about my online coaching program, please get in touch. We can have a chat, and I can let you know what it's all about. Great. Thanks for listening.